close your eyes, drift into the silence of the Pacific night. It's October 1944. A submarine glides through dark waters, the USS Tang, America's most feared hunter of the deep. At her helm, Commander Richard "Dick" O'Kane. The crew waits as torpedoes streak into the night. Explosions shatter the silence. Another enemy convoy destroyed. Victory seems certain. But then, a flash of fate. One torpedo turns back, racing toward its own ship. Within seconds, triumph becomes tragedy. From that moment, the history would forever remember Dick O'Kane, not just as a survivor, but as the deadliest submarine commander of World War II. This is his story of courage, sacrifice, and a legacy written beneath the waves. Before he was a commander, before his name echoed through naval history, Richard O'Kane was simply a boy, born in Dover, New Hampshire, in the summer of 1911. His childhood unfolded along quiet streets where the rhythm of life was steady and unhurried. But for young Richard, there was always something deeper stirring inside, a pull toward the sea. The ocean was more than water to him. It was a mystery, a vast, endless horizon calling him to adventure. He would watch the waves, listen to the gulls, and dream of faraway places, dreams that would one day lead him to command a vessel in the deadliest of wars. As he grew, so did his discipline. Richard was not only curious, but determined. Each challenge he faced, whether in studies or in sport, he met with quiet resolve, his mind sharp, his focus unwavering. In time, that resolve carried him to the gates of the United States Naval Academy, Annapolis, class of 1934, a place where boys became men and men became leaders. There, O'Kane's character began to take its final shape, forged in classrooms, sharpened on the parade ground, tested in the endless drills of midshipman life. He was not the loudest, not the most flamboyant, but he was steady, thoughtful, a man of quiet confidence. And though he could not yet know it, the path that began in Dover and passed through Annapolis would one day lead him into the silent depths of the Pacific, where destiny waited in steel and shadow. Graduation from Annapolis was not the end, but the beginning. For Richard O'Kane, the question was not if he would serve, but how he would serve. Many chose the open decks of battleships, the flight decks of carriers, the familiar safety of the surface fleet. But O'Kane looked elsewhere, beneath the waves, to the silent, shadowed world of submarines, the silent service, the most dangerous branch of the Navy, where the steel hull was both shield and prison, where one mistake could mean being lost forever to the sea. Few volunteered, fewer still endured, but for O'Kane, it was a calling. Training was relentless. Men drilled in fire control, navigation, and survival, learning to trust machines that pressed them into the crushing weight of the ocean. It was a world of red-lit control rooms, of sonar pings echoing through the silence, of air that grew thick and heavy on long patrols. For O'Kane, the submarine demanded everything: precision, calm, courage, and in return, it gave him purpose. He studied every system, every tactic, until the submarine was not just a vessel, but an extension of himself. He was patient, but daring, measured, but never timid. These were the qualities that marked him early as a man destined for command. And soon, his path would place him alongside one of the most daring submarine captains of the war, Dudley "Mush" Morton, aboard a boat that would make history, the USS Wahoo. By 1942, the world was at war, and the Pacific was burning. Richard O'Kane's path carried him to a submarine that would soon become a legend, the USS Wahoo. Her captain, Dudley "Mush" Morton, was bold, daring, unafraid to take risks that others would never attempt, and at his side stood O'Kane, the executive officer, the man who would calculate torpedo runs, call the shots, and turn risk into victory. Together they rewrote the rules of submarine warfare. Morton gave the orders. O'Kane delivered the precision. Their bond was unshakable. One a fiery leader, the other a calm, steady hand. The Wahoo prowled the Pacific like a predator in the deep, slipping through enemy waters, striking supply convoys, vanishing back into silence. Attacks came swift and sudden, torpedoes streaking through black water, explosions breaking the night, ships burning, keeling, sinking into the sea. O'Kane watched, learned, absorbed. He studied Morton's audacity, but he paired it with his own quiet discipline. He understood the submarine not only as a weapon, but as a lifeline for every man aboard. Each patrol of Wahoo etched lessons into his soul, lessons in leadership, in daring, in responsibility. And in time, those lessons would prepare him for his own command. The sea was shaping him. The war was shaping him. And soon, Richard O'Kane would step into the role for which destiny had prepared him. Commander of his own submarine, the USS Tang. By 1943, the Navy placed in Richard O'Kane's hands the most precious gift and the heaviest burden, his own command, the brand-new submarine USS Tang. She was sleek, modern, a predator of steel and silence, and O'Kane treated her not as a machine, but as a living being, a vessel whose soul was the men who served within her. He chose his crew carefully, handpicking sailors who were sharp, disciplined, and brave enough to follow him into the unknown. In training, he demanded perfection. Every drill practiced until instinct replaced thought. Every torpedo solution run until the crew could act as one heartbeat. But with that discipline came trust. O'Kane was not a tyrant. He led with calm authority. He inspired loyalty, not through fear, but through respect. His men knew that when the time came, their captain would never ask of them what he would not face himself. On her first patrols, Tang carved her name into the sea. Convoys scattered in panic as torpedoes struck true. Japanese warships hunted, but could not catch her. O'Kane led daring attacks on the surface at night, racing through enemy ships at point-blank range, cool, steady, unflinching. With each success, Tang's reputation grew, a ghost in the Pacific, a nightmare for Japanese shipping, and at the heart of it all was O'Kane, calm eyes behind the periscope, steady hands guiding his men, a commander who would soon be called the deadliest in the silent service. The USS Tang did not take long to become a legend. Her patrols through the Pacific read like chapters of daring and triumph, each mission more audacious than the last. Each returned to port marked by the silence of the ships she had sent to the bottom. Richard O'Kane's style was different from many. He was patient, calculating, yet never afraid to take the bold shot. At night he brought Tang to the surface, weaving through enemy convoys at point-blank range. Torpedoes fired so close the explosions rattled the hull. Convoys that once felt secure beneath the cover of darkness now found themselves shattered. Transport ships burst into flames, destroyers thrown into confusion, and in the middle of the chaos, O'Kane's submarine slipped away, unseen, unheard. Again and again the report stunned the Navy. No other submarine, no other commander, matched the destruction wrought by Tang. Over 5 patrols, O'Kane and his crew sank ship after ship, crippling Japanese supply lines, starving their armies of fuel, weapons, and food. For his men, each mission was a test of endurance, days spent in silence, listening to the enemy's depth charges, thunder above, breathing air that grew stale and heavy, knowing that one mistake could mean their end. Yet they followed O'Kane without hesitation, because they trusted him completely. By 1944, Tang stood as the deadliest submarine in the Pacific, and O'Kane as the most feared commander beneath the waves. But even legends are not immune to fate, and destiny was waiting on the horizon of their final patrol. October 1944. The Formosa Strait. The USS Tang begins what would become her final patrol. The mission is extraordinary. In a matter of days, O'Kane and his crew devastate Japanese shipping. Tankers, freighters, transports, ship after ship is torn apart by Tang's torpedoes. In one patrol, she sinks more enemy tonnage than some submarines achieved in their entire careers. But the night of October 24th will be remembered forever. O'Kane lines up another attack. The convoy is close, the torpedoes ready. He gives the order. Steel leaves the tubes, streaking into the darkness. Explosions erupt across the water. Another victory. And then silence. Until one torpedo circles back. A flaw known but dreaded. A weapon turning against the hand that fired it. In seconds, there is no time to react. The deadly arc completes, and the torpedo slams into Tang's stern. The explosion is thunderous. Metal twists, compartments flood. Men are thrown into chaos as the submarine reels from the blow. Some are lost instantly. Others fight to escape the crushing depths. O'Kane himself is thrown clear of the bridge into the sea, gasping in the dark, watching as his command, his ship, his men vanish beneath the waves. Of the crew of 87, only 9 survive, pulled from the waters, broken but alive. For the others, silence closes forever. The deadliest submarine in the Pacific, undone not by the enemy, but by her own weapon. The survivors of Tang, including Richard O'Kane, were dragged from the sea, not into freedom, but into captivity. They were taken to Japan, where prison camps awaited, dark places where cruelty lived in silence. Days blurred into nights, hunger gnawed at their bodies, cold seeped into their bones, and fear shadowed every hour. Beatings came often. Food was scarce. Disease spread unchecked. The men who had once prowled the ocean as hunters now struggled simply to endure. Yet even there, in the heart of suffering, O'Kane remained steady. His quiet strength gave his men something to cling to, a reminder that leadership was not only about victory, but about survival. He kept faith alive, with small words of encouragement, with the calm of his presence, reminding them that beyond the barbed wire, beyond the pain, there was still hope. Month after month the war dragged on. The men grew weaker, but they endured, until at last, in 1945, the war ended, and the camps were opened. For O'Kane, freedom was bittersweet. He lived, but so many of his men were gone. His ship lay silent in the deep, a grave for those who had followed him so faithfully. The weight of survival and the memory of those lost would remain with him for the rest of his days. Richard O'Kane returned home to a nation that owed him much. He had faced the depths of war, endured the silence of captivity, and emerged carrying the weight of both victory and loss. For his leadership aboard the USS Tang, for the daring attacks that crippled Japanese shipping, and for his unwavering courage, he was awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest recognition his country could give. It was not his only decoration. O'Kane also received 3 Navy Crosses, 3 Silver Stars, and a Legion of Merit, each medal a symbol, not only of his skill, but of the sacrifice of the men who served under him. In the record books, he stood apart, credited with sinking more enemy ships than any other U.S. submarine commander of the Second World War. 31 vessels lost beneath the waves, countless convoys disrupted, supply lines severed. Yet for O'Kane, the medals were not triumphs to boast of. They were reminders of the men who had not returned, of the ship that still lay in the deep. He carried those honors with quiet dignity, never for himself, but always in memory of his crew, the brothers who had made Tang a legend. After the guns fell silent and Richard O'Kane continued to serve the Navy, his knowledge, his discipline, his experience, all became lessons for the generations of submariners who followed. He remained in uniform until 1957, guiding, teaching, shaping the silent service he had helped to define. But even as he wore the stripes of command, the sea still whispered to him, with memories of battles won and brothers lost. When he retired, O'Kane turned to the page, writing Clear the Bridge, and later Wahoo, books that carried readers into the hidden world of submarine warfare, stories of courage, precision, and sacrifice. His words preserved not only his own story, but the legacy of the silent service itself. In retirement, he lived quietly, away from the noise of fame, away from the spotlight that history sometimes demands. He was known as a humble man, never one to glorify himself, never forgetting that his greatest victories were written with the lives of others. For Richard O'Kane, life after war was not about celebration, but remembrance, carrying forward the memory of the men who had given everything beneath the waves, and ensuring that their story, like his own, would never be lost. Richard O'Kane's story did not end with his life. His legacy lived on, in every submarine that slipped quietly into the depths, in every sailor who looked through a periscope with steady hands, in every commander who balanced daring with discipline. His tactics reshaped the silent service, night surface attacks, close-range strikes, the belief that courage and precision could overcome even the greatest odds. These became lessons taught to generations of submariners, lessons born from the mind of a man who trusted both his crew and his own calm resolve. The USS Tang remains at rest, her steel hull silent beneath the waves, a grave for the men who gave everything. Yet in that silence their memory endures, kept alive by the voice and the vision of the man who led them. Schools bear his name, so too do naval halls of honor. His books still speak to those who seek to understand what it meant to fight in the hidden war beneath the sea. To this day, Richard Dick O'Kane is remembered not just as America's deadliest submarine commander, but as a leader of men, a sailor who carried the weight of triumph and tragedy with quiet strength. His story is one of the sea, of steel and silence, of courage and loss, and in the endless roll of waves, his legacy remains. A commander, a warrior, a legend of the deep. And so, the story of Richard Dick O'Kane drifts into the quiet of history, a life shaped by the sea, tested by war, scarred by loss, and remembered through courage. As the waves roll endlessly across the Pacific, somewhere deep below, the USS Tang still rests, silent, eternal, carrying with her the memory of the men who never came home. Close your eyes, let the ocean's silence surround you, and remember that even in the darkest waters, the light of courage still shines. Good night, and may his story stay with you long after the last whisper fades,